All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the DEO Thriving Leaders podcast. I'm Jordin McEntire, and I'm so excited to have you guys here tonight. One thing that I know about most of you that are either listening to this episode or joining the call live with us tonight, you're either running practices, you're managing teams, and you're trying to scale and trying to do everything at once. So some days you feel like you're crushing it, other days you feel like you're just surviving, barely getting your head above the water. So just wanted to start that off. That is the reality of leadership. Welcome. But there's one difference between everyone that's joining this call and those of you that are listening today is that you understand that the only way to grow is to know. Lucky for you tonight, we actually have an amazing guest that we get to learn from, someone that's made mistakes, someone that has successfully scaled. So I want to introduce to you tonight, we have our guest, Dr. Tyler Tolbert. His story is pretty intriguing, so I'm going to allow him the opportunity to introduce himself, but really quickly, he is a dentist, so he did graduate. He has been practicing. Tyler started the Pursuit of Ownership podcast. He's been coaching dental students, professionals in his practice ownership career. He's launched multiple practices as a clinical director. He has overseen 35 plus offices. He is responsible for the hiring, the training, the auditing performance, mentoring doctors across the entire organization. So when I say we have a gold gym, we've got the gold gym. So welcome. During that time, he also founded, you see his lovely sign behind him, the Fixed Podcast. So he's an expert at this. It is the first podcast, I believe, that's really dedicated entirely to full arch dentistry. So it's nice if you guys are not a follower, please subscribe, listen to that. But yeah, welcome, Doctor. I would love for you to kind of kick us off, give us a short introduction and what you're hoping that they get out of tonight's episode.
Yeah, that's quite an intro to follow. I appreciate it, Jordan. It's funny when I look at my own resume and kind of look at what I've done in the past and what I'm doing currently, I can kind of understand where people come from and being so impressed by it. I get it. But at the same time, I think that my experience of it is very much like everyone else's and whatever that they're doing. A lot of us feel like we have no idea what we're doing. We're shooting from the hip sometimes. But I think that if you have a vision and you just stay, really locked into that and are always shaking hands with new people and getting advice from others, such as yourself, such as others from DEO, and just do your best. You'll be surprised what you can accomplish as long as you stick to it and keep betting on yourself. But yeah, just kind of a brief intro. So I'm originally from Macon, Georgia. That's where I was born and raised. I went to dental school in Augusta, Georgia, the Dental College of Georgia. I graduated in 2021. So I was a COVID grad, which meant that I essentially didn't do any dentistry for pretty much the last year of my education. But it was actually pretty cool because that gave me an opportunity to do a lot of outside education as well. So throughout all of dental school, I had this intention that I wanted to own an office right out of school. And so that was like really my big thing. And from the time that I joined in, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but when I was getting into dental school, I knew that dentistry was great in its opportunity to, make a good income, but also be able to run your own business and make your own choices about what you want your lifestyle to be like. And I like the sound of that. And so I had gone through the whole podcasting world of dentistry that I kind of discovered whenever I was wasting time at the job that I had at that time while I was taking a gap year. And I found some podcasts that really inspired me, and I was reaching out to a lot of them, and ended up getting essentially what was an internship for a podcast. And so throughout all of dental school, I was in the dental podcasting space. I was helping with evaluating practices. I was coaching dental students and dentists alike on how to get to practice ownership. So I learned sort of that whole process as it went. And my idea was that in the time leading up to graduating, I was going to, find a older, soon to retire doc, inspire them to sell to a young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed dental student and buy a practice right out of school. And did everything I could to prepare for that. And then things just changed. There were a lot of things that sort of changed my mind about what kind of dentist I wanted to be. I got really fortunate to get a implant scholarship, so to speak, to go through implant pathway, which, if you're not familiar, is a training facility out in Tempe, Arizona, where they teach implants pretty much 0 to 1, all the way from single implants doing full arch and beyond. And I was able to do that like my D2 year. And it just really transformed my interest. I'd always kind of seen myself more as a business owner than a clinician, but that kind of changed my mind and showed me the kind of impact that I could have on patients. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'm kind of getting into the surgery thing. Maybe that's what I really want to focus on. And so by the time I had actually graduated, my focus was a lot more on full arch and doing implants. And the company I was working with at the time actually wanted to start some denture and implant offices. So they had started one. Their first office was out in Phoenix, Arizona. So that was actually my first associateship right out of school. I went and did that instead, and sort of cut my teeth on that. I mean, it was a lot getting into full arch implantology with as little actual surgery experience as I had. But throughout that time in COVID, I was able to take a whole bunch of CEs and learn as much as I could about clinical dentistry. And so I spent just about a year really practicing that and just focusing on clinical skills, and got up to the point where I knew it well enough to start to teach people how to do it as well, and rose up the ranks in that company to clinical director. And I was responsible for recruiting and hiring, and also involved in the practice startup aspect of things as well. And so in a very short time, we that group had grown to about 35 offices, and I was responsible for about half of them. I had another clinical director that was more responsible for different regions than mine, and we would fly around the country helping out people with their surgeries, fixing problems, helping people that were newer to the game. And after a while, we felt that we were in a group that had some symptoms of really aggressive horizontal expansion without really investing in same site growth and development of their clinicians. And we saw some things falling through the cracks that we just weren't happy to be representing. And so we decided earlier last year that we had a lot of ideas of things that we wanted to do differently, and if we wanted to get them done and we wanted a seat at the cap table, that we had to build something ourselves. And so we decided to bet on ourselves. And I got together with a couple partners, Dr. Caleb Stott, who started the original Smile Now office on his own in Boise, Idaho, and Dr. Soren Poppy, who was my cohort at our last company. And we
Wow.
all, yeah, we all broke off, and we started to franchise this whole Smile Now model. So Soren started another office in Denver. Caleb, of course, already had his in Boise, and another office was identified in the Tri-Cities, Washington area that was available, and there were no other, full arch gigs out there, and it looked like there was a decent market for it. And so that's really where it all started. And then over the course of the past year, we've expanded to 9 locations. We've got some really fantastic partner doctors in all those locations that seem to be very happy, and they're producing more than they ever have in their whole lives, and they've got some practice ownership to boot. And we're really proud of what we built. It's kind of amazing to look back on, the past shoot, I guess it's coming up on maybe 18 months or so of growth. And I think it looks like a bottle rocket that just, took off and it was just like this really reckless thing. But, we have been measured, and we've been principled throughout all of it. And we've always doubled down on clinical excellence and making sure we had competent people in the right places. And I think when you have the right people in the right jobs, not only at the clinic level, but at the operational and organizational level, you'll be pretty amazed to watch your garden just kind of grow as you go. And at no point have we ever felt like we completely had control of everything that was going on, right? I mean, when you start building a bigger company, and there's a lot of money coming in and out, I mean, it can sometimes feel like chaos, but at the end of the day, we built something that's high revenue, very profitable, and I think is, a pretty decent product here. So we're really happy with what we built. We've stayed principled and kept to our values the whole time, and I'm really proud to be doing that. And, we're all still practicing 4 days a week, just being dentists ourselves. So we're kind of reaching a bit of a critical mass point where now we need to build a little bit more infrastructure to continue to scale. So it's an interesting time for a company,
Good.
but yeah, I think I've been droning on long enough. So
Well, and honestly, Doc, I will say, like where you're at, a lot of the members that are on the call tonight, a lot of those of you that are listening to this episode afterwards, that's really where they're at.
mhm.
So you got to this place where you're like, okay, hey, if I could give one piece of advice, right? You've obviously learned, you've supported several offices. Now you guys are up to the 9 locations. If there was one lesson, let's just say you had to pick one lesson that you had to learn the hard way, that you would
Mhm.
want other dental entrepreneurs to maybe learn now versus as they scale so they can avoid this lesson, what would that lesson be?
You have to pick your tribe really carefully. I think that a lot of the changes that have happened for all of us in the past 18 months or so have really revolved around the people that we were working with and people that we were trusting. I think it's important that the people that you build something with have skin in the game along with you, and that there is something, you all have a similar understanding that you're building something that's bigger than any of you. And so it kind of eliminates that sort of partisan, scarcity that sometimes comes out of partnerships that I think can really tear them apart. I think partnerships can be very dangerous. I mean, we have a three-way partnership. It's very easy to have a 2 out of 3 majority and leave one person feeling stranded. And that's always a tenuous balance. But if you're really careful about the people you choose and you know you can trust them and they have similar values to you and they see this as a bigger thing than themselves and they can be a part of that, it's a really beautiful thing. And you really see some synergy evolve out of that. But when I look at people that I've worked with in the past, some of those people were people I really looked up to in terms of their financial and business acumen. At least I thought so. And they seem to be trustworthy. And many of them I consider very close friends. But ultimately, had I not bet on myself and kind of seen the writing on the wall and surrounded myself with a different group of people, I'd still be in that same place. And when I look back at that, I think that would be kind of tragic compared to how things are now. And so
Yeah.
it really is the people that you keep around you and the people that you trust with this thing that you're wanting to build.
Okay.
It makes all the difference.
So when you say the people around you, I'm going to double click on this a little bit because and those of you
Mm-hmm.
that are maybe in a chat, if you're like, hey, like I'm looking to scale, I'm looking to partner. Partnership is a lot of the conversations I have on a lot of coaching calls that I support. What makes a good partner, right? How do you know? Because you're very ambitious and you're ready to
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, it could be a two-way, it could be a three-way, but if you had to put your finger on, you mentioned earlier like a horizontal, vertical. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing this as like, hey, we need to like go deep before we go
Mm-hmm.
wide. So we
Yeah.
need to like get in it before we try to
Mm-hmm.
expand, is what I
Mm-hmm.
heard. How do you identify that potential like partner? What would they be looking for in their ideal partner?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be naturally it has to be someone that you feel you can trust. It has to be someone that has values that are aligned with yours, and someone that exhibits qualities of being able to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. How you want to really parse that out. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. Fortunately, with these particular people, I'd known them for several years and worked closely with them, and we kind of been through similar troubles. And there were a lot of things that happened along the way where I learned that I could trust them more so than others. And so, it's kind of this like blood bond that you make. I mean, it's more impactful. I also got married in the past year, and I can honestly say that I took a bigger risk in a business partnership than I did in a marriage, right? Even though they say like who you marry is like the most important decision you ever make. It probably is true, like holistically, but in terms of business solely, who you partner with is a much higher stake decision. So you have to be extremely careful with that. You have to see people that aren't always choosing themselves over others, but people that are willing to self-sacrifice for a greater good, people that are willing to treat your back as if it's their own. I think that's really what it comes down to. And I know that's a bit immaterial. It's not something that you can just read off of a resume and figure out, oh, this will be a good partner. But if you're just reading off a resume, that's probably not a good partner. You need to really know who this person is because you're going to be strapped along with them for the whole ride. And friendships and businesses fall apart, with partnerships. It's a very dangerous thing to go about, but it can also be beautiful when you have the right people.
Yeah. And
Um,
when you
but
mentioned the right people, I want to kind of ask that outside of partnership, right? Because of course there's the partners that are driving the company and the scale and doing all this vision with you, but you have operators, you have team members, you have other things happening. What do you guys do when there's like chaos happening? How do you guys come together and solve that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, oftentimes it starts with a one-on-one because typically, people feel a little bit more comfortable being vulnerable in a one-on-one conversation. And then once we kind of glean some details from that, we'll usually open it up and the three of us will have a conference with a particular person or however many people are having some type of chaos or dispute. But what I find is, whenever problems come up, you have to be willing to tackle them head on and do so personally, I think. Maybe that's not true when you scale to a much larger business, but for us, we're still very much in the trenches, working very closely with our regional managers who are responsible for these offices. And, we meet with them weekly. We talk with them daily. And we're always discussing ways to better take care of their offices and sort out disputes that happen along the way. And we're always showing that support there. But yeah, I mean, I would say that takes up a lot of the work, right? It just in supporting the people that, you're trusting with your business. But at the same time, it's a balance too, because while you do want to take care of these things personally, you have to look at the kind of problems that are arising. One a book that my dad gave me right when I was starting this business was called a message to Garcia, and I won't bore anyone with like all the gritty details of it, but basically it's set during the Spanish American War, and I don't know how true this actually is, but
It's
President
true as
McKinley.
you make us believe it. No, I'm kidding.
So, basically, President McKinley is trying to, get a letter down to a General Garcia who's down there, and he entrusts a person with taking the letter down there. And instead of giving him a laundry list of how to get it over there, he just says, "I need you to take this to Garcia." And so the book kind of describes all the things that Lieutenant Rowan is the name does to get this letter to Garcia, but what actually ends up coming back to McKinley is, okay, I delivered the letter, right? So there's just so many things that were taken on, but the person that was entrusted with that task managed to take care of it and execute on what they were told to do without then reflecting back on the person that told them what to do, all these things that came up and all these, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? Which actually just creates work, right? So it's like when I ask someone to do something, does that now create work for me to tell them exactly how to do it? Or does this person take the direction and then figure out how to do it and take on leadership with that task? And I think that when you kind of use that as a sieve, you can tell the kind of people that are going to be competent leaders in their positions. Like, and in every person that has a leadership position, that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for people that, need a long laundry list of directions. And, we want to see people that can, try to mitigate situations on their own. If they get to a point where they're completely stuck and it's now going to prevent them from getting something done, sure, bring it back. But the kind of things that people come back to you with and how much they've actually worked to solve the problem on their own tell you a lot about how much leadership that they're willing to take on, I think. So.
Yeah. And I like how you're going on the people segments. I know one thing kind of you and I were jammed out on, and I kind of read about you, is you had an aha moment where it's like, hey, Jordan, I figured out that it wasn't necessarily always the how, right? You can have the SOPs, you can have the how-tos, you can
Hmm.
put everything in place. But what I'm
Hmm.
hearing is you're actually saying like the real bottleneck is the who. Like who
Yeah.
is it that you have in charge of these things? So tell me about that unlock moment. When was that in your career? How did that happen?
Well, I think, it happens in a microcosm, right? It happens in an office, right? So when I first started the Tri-Cities office, which was the first office that, I guess technically the third office in Smile now, I went through a series of office managers. I think I had five before we landed on one that was actually pretty stable. And this was all in like a very short period of time, which maybe that says something about how I am to work with. I don't know. Um, but
Way to be self-reflecting here. No.
yeah, yeah. But I found myself so often, always seeking the good in people and wanting the best for them and wanting them to flourish in a position. And there were so many times where I realized that I should have realized that the person that I had in that seat just wasn't the right person. And I would get frustrated with them. I would micromanage. I would get emotional with myself, saying like, "Why is this person not doing what I need them to do? Why are they not getting this?" And I would get so frustrated about it, trying to, turn someone into something that they weren't. Right. Even if they really wanted to be that, if the results weren't there, if the performance wasn't really there, I could have been more objective. I could have said, you know what, I don't think this was the right call. Maybe you can be better used in this position, or maybe you'd be better off somewhere else. And if I'd done that a lot sooner, I would have wasted a lot less resources. Right. And so that scales, as you grow the business and you grow out of just the office and you're looking at the organization as a whole, it should inform that, the right person, when they're in that spot, all of a sudden a lot of things get easy really quickly. Like when I finally did get a competent office manager that knew how to, take on incoming leads as they came in, they knew how to engage them, they knew how to get people in the door, they knew how to form rapport and like really engage these people and become a part of their story and provide solutions for them, and not just problems of, how are we going to pay for this type of thing. When I saw them really perform and extract the potential that was in that office, I mean, we went from doing, somewhere between 120 to 150,000 a month to, I think 509K. And that happened in a span of like 2 months of taking this new person on. And I realized that, I didn't really change a whole lot. I mean, some of the expectations and things changed. Some of the structure that I provided, that had been built while I was trying to get people that weren't really fit for that position to do their job, that helped for sure. That helped expedite that process. But ultimately, it was the person that was in that position that made all the difference. It wasn't really any additional work that I had to do to turn a person that was maybe a 4 out of 10 for a position into a 7 out of 10. If I started with an 8 out of 10, I could easily get them to a nine, 9.5, right? You can't, you can only build so much greatness. Like you have to have the right ingredients in the first place. It's like making a pizza. Like if you got really frankly shitty ingredients, like you're not going to have a great pizza. That's just the end of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
end of story. So yeah, just focusing on the who's and making sure you have the right people and learning how to identify those people for that given role is more important than, over systematizing and having a super stepwise function of how someone should do their job. People can frankly even be kind of sloppy at their job, but they can still be really effective if they have the right qualities. And so, yeah, we focus a lot more on the who. We get to really know people inside and out and understand how they handle things. And there's just there's a little bit more gut to it now, I think, and just finding who is going to be emphatic about a position, who's really getting after it and trying to learn as much as they can, who is treating it like more than just a job and taking ownership over their position. That's really important.
So do you feel like you mentioned you went through like five managers before this like aha moment kind of
Yeah.
happened? So
Yeah. I'm
I,
not very quick to learn. Yeah.
yeah, so but this is important because I think a lot of us as leaders, what I'm hearing is like it's called force fit, right? We're gonna force you into this position
Yeah.
because we need you in this position. And so I'm hearing that a little bit. So if you have some
Yeah.
force fit, so let's say you got maybe you're the right person, but wrong seat, and you're just
Mhm.
forcing them into that role. How would you like suggest that we go about that conversation? How do we start that? What does that look like?
Well, I think it always comes down to just, it comes down to crucial conversations, right? Being able to sit down with a person one on one and, ask them how they feel about how they're doing and where might they improve or where might they, where certain aspect, like here's you and then here's the job. And let's talk about how well suited you are for that position, what works for you, what doesn't, what are you struggling with the most? And I think that through that conversation and through asking sometimes challenging questions, but asking it in a empathetic and understanding way, a lot of times people can arrive at the correct conclusion themselves. A lot of times people can figure out, let's say, let's assume someone really isn't right for that position. They're not growing in it, that they've had enough time to get up to speed and they're just not there. Well, if you have clear expectations for what is asked for in the position and they haven't been meeting those expectations, it's if you spend enough time with that person, you really talk them through what they've been struggling with and why they've been having those problems, and you explain and you show all the ways in which you try to support them, eventually they can find their way to the conclusion that maybe that's just not quite the right fit for them. And like you said, maybe there is another seat that makes sense. Maybe there is another set of responsibilities that will work. But it's kind of like, hey, let's work together and let's solve this problem because I want you to feel empowered in your position. I want you to flourish in the position. I want you to like coming to work. I don't want you to dread this. I don't want you to be full of anxiety and just know that you're not doing things wrong. Like, let's figure out what you can do right here. And if there's no position here that's going to work for that, well, let's not waste time, right? Like let's find you like you need to find something better for yourself, and that might not be with us, and that's okay. I think that we make it. We often get scared of how people will respond to that type of confrontation, but really, it's the most empathetic thing that you can do. One of the worst things that you can do when someone is struggling in a position that's not really well suited for them is to just let that happen and be mad about it internally and never really confront that and have that conversation with them. Um, and if you just kind of let that fester, what you're going to end up with is you're going to have someone send you a text Monday morning saying, "Hey, I'm not coming in," right? And then now you're in a compromising position. They've kind of done something that's kind of unceremonious, and it's just not a good situation. It could have been stopped earlier if you just kind of tackle that sort of thing head on and had a crucial conversation a lot earlier about how someone was doing. But it all starts with like really clear expectations and checking in with people and seeing how those expectations are being met. And if the ends can't meet, then they can't meet. But set those expectations ahead of time and know that people are being evaluated as they go and know what's expected of them. And I don't think those conversations are as hard as we make them out to be in our head.
Yeah. So I'm here. So what about those of us like, let's say I'm conflict avoid. I don't like conflict. I just would rather like,
Hmm.
just not have the conversation.
Hmm.
I'm sure there's some of us on this call that don't like conflict.
Hmm.
How would you coach a leader through? I know you said like clear expectations,
Hmm.
having the conversation, but what if I just don't like conflict? Like how
Yeah.
would you coach me through as a leader to break through that?
Well, I mean, I would say that that's probably been my biggest limitation as a leader is I'm very conflict avoidant. I generally avoid talking to people, and I mean, I love people, but it can be a little bit draining sometimes, especially when there's something sort of tense to be discussed. Like I can find a million reasons not to have a discussion, right? I can think of so many different excuses, but at the end of the day, I think you have to be able to compartmentalize yourself just a little bit from how the sort of fears and assumptions you make about how a conversation is going to go, and just remember like what is actually best for my business, what's
Oh, that's
best
good.
yeah, what's best for the business? What does not me, but what does a leader need to do right now? What does a leader need to do to take control of the situation? And then just describe that. And actually, the scenario that you just created for me is exactly what I do for myself. Right? It's like, okay, if I'm going outside of myself and someone is asking me what they should do about this situation, I'm going to tell them exactly what they need to do. Now, telling myself to do that is really hard, but I can tell someone else to do it. And then then at the very end of that, I just say, you know what? Everything I just said to that theoretical person, I now need to do myself, and I just need to do it, right? And just go. And when you really get used to that just go thing, like if you can just identify what needs to be done, and then there's the go, and if you can just make that a straight line, then you can do this effectively. And it's an exercise. You have to engage in this to make it easier to do. And over time, I find that the anxiety around that and the pain around that does subside, and you actually get a little bit of reward from it. When you go through something that you're scared of, like I'm also terrified of heights. But I've gone on skydiving, right? And I was scared the whole time. It wasn't exactly a
A little
fun
bit
thing.
afraid. Yeah.
Right. But like I lived in that afraid. I lived in that discomfort and I got through it. And it was like one of the most euphoric feelings once I touched ground because I'm like, wow, I just did that. Right. So you have to kind of take those leaps and work yourself through that discomfort on a regular basis, to kind of dull that edge a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think in short, that's probably the most powerful thing you can do is just externalize yourself and give yourself that advice or give someone else that advice, but it's really you. And then just do the thing. So
I like that. So I think I'm going to pause here for a second. So I'd like to give those of you that are listening now, if maybe you can chime in on the chat, come off mute, get a little vulnerable here, but just want to pause because I feel like what you're saying right now is important. So I want to make sure that it's heard. So what I'm
yeah.
hearing is leadership isn't always about, hey, I'm going to make everyone happy. Me
Mhm.
as a person would like to make everyone happy.
Yeah.
A leader's goal is, okay, how can I get them to understand what's expected of them, hold them accountable with clear expectations, because it's about what's best for the business.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, those of you that are listening, if anyone feels like they can come off mute, maybe this is a good time to chime in. Are you going through this? Do you have some questions? Um, anyone listening want to kind of chime in or feel vulnerable enough to?
I can,
Let's do it.
Jordan. Um, so we just we just got through a experience where one of our employees was like threatening to sue us for like harassment, discrimination from one of our office managers, and it was just like not ideal, not great, and we didn't know about like EPLI insurance, so we didn't have it at the time, and so we had to pay for like all the attorney fees and like legal fees like out of pocket, and that sucked. Like we like settled and with him like outside of whatever, and it was brutal. Uh, anyways, that just like kind of came out of me and Ian's pocket, and I think for us, it got to the point where by getting burned, we just realized like, hey, because we with this particular employee, like we were very, very kind, really generous, spent tons of time with them. And I think it was an eye opener for me that it's just like, hey, we have to, if we ever have to prioritize anything, it needs to be like we prioritize our business over anything else. It's like if you have a conversation with me and like that puts our business in jeopardy, like unfortunately I have to do what's best for the business. I can't put you first. I can't, even if we're friends or I like you or whatever. So I think it made us a little bit more selfish or I think protective of the business. And I think it got us to a point where we are now I guess like a little bit more willing because I'm super nice and I don't like to have hard conversations. I think a lot of us would probably say, "Oh, I don't love having those difficult conversations." The other thing was we implemented this thing. It's called the STAR method. Alex Hormozy talks about it. He has like a podcast that talks about it, and it's like he tries to make it a way where you make sure you're really really clear about um, expectations and you go over like everything that you as a leader might fail on of like did I explain the what, did I explain the how, the when, the all those types of things. Did I go over that? And then if somebody's not doing something that you need them to do, it's like going through that of like kind of assuming that you were the issue as the leader first with the person. Like, hey, was it unclear on this? Was it unclear on this? Was it unclear on this? And then it's like, if you did do all those things, then it's like, okay, now I can kind of point it back to you. But it just seems less like, hey, you're not doing your job, whatever. It's like, let me ask to see, like, these were the expectations, but maybe I didn't do a good job as a leader. So you kind of start with that. So I think it makes it less difficult to have like that difficult conversation, I guess. But that was just one thing that's been helpful for our practices.
Yeah, that's great. Are you Ian or Max?
Sorry, I'm Max.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, hi Max. No, I really appreciate that input. So I looked this up because I think I saw like a little tidbit from Alex Hormozy and he described this, but I didn't remember the actual acronym. So it's setting clear expectations is the S, training for skill, assessing for knowledge and readiness, removing blockers, and then most importantly, following up on progress. And I love that because it's a process framework, that everyone can just participate in. And it's not just like this sort of flying by the seat of our pants, like having the occasional uncomfortable conversation. And so I love that you shared that, and I think that's really valuable. And then the first part, I really like too, because you talk about just doing what's best for the business, and I think that kind of going back to the concept of partnership as well is like a really tough partnership is where it's like you and another person or more people, all of you own a business, right? It's like all of us now share this thing, and it's kind of this independent thing. But if you sort of change that relationship and say, well, the business is up here actually, and we all work for the business in equal parts, it's a totally different relationship, and it helps you be a little bit more objective. Think that you work for the business, right? And that just kind of changes that relationship a little bit, and it kind of almost puts us in a little bit of an employee mindset where we can be like, okay, this is what I've been told to do. Now I can do this. This is my job. This is my role. And I think just externalizing our feelings just a little bit and just thinking purely about what the business actually needs in that moment can really provide that sort of clarity. And then it's just like doing the thing. And it sucks for the time that you have to do it, but it's going to be so good when it gets fixed. It is so painful to let a problem, especially a people problem, just exist and persist and grow and just get more bitter and acrimonious. And it puts you into this, a potentially litigious situation over time, like the longer we nurse it along. And it's painful, man. I mean, I totally identify with a lot that you just said. I think we're kind of similar people in that regard.
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'll add on, you guys, those of you listening to this call, just from a perspective, what I'm hearing from Tyler, what I'm hearing is remember that the person you're speaking with is one person, right? So when you're having this difficult conversation with this one person, it's one person you're having this difficult conversation with. But remember, as a leader and as a business owner and as a partner, think about the families that you need to stay in business for. You need to have your
Yeah.
business safe because you're feeding their families, you're providing an income for them. So I just think this conversation is so powerful. So I wanted to pause, see if there's anyone vulnerable enough to come off and talk with Tyler about it and jam out because it's awesome that we have him on. So let's see, corrective coaching is like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you are at it. Amen. Yes, absolutely. So love that. Okay, so I am curious. We're gonna kind of shift gears just a little bit here. So any last kind of questions on this leadership topic before we kind of shift gears? Anyone want to pick Tyler's brain before we shift a little bit? Okay, cool. So here's where I do want to kind of chime in. So let's talk about picking the right people. So we've talked about how when we have the people in the seat and they're maybe not performing, Tyler, how do we pick the right people? Uh-oh, I think you're on mute.
Oh, and sorry, Jordan, can I ask a quick question before we
Yeah.
go into that?
Yeah,
It was just
please.
about what's like your org chart in terms of like your not org chart in your business, but the owners. Like, how have you like divided roles? Or are you guys all clinicians? Do you guys is it a clinician, you, and then you've got like a CMO and as what like that are is marketing heavy? Not. I'm just kind of curious, like how you guys have created that like dream team for you guys.
Yeah. So yes to everything. We're all clinicians still working 4 days a week, which I think early on was absolutely a virtue in our model because we really understood, the doctor perspective of it, and we've been very, doctor first and getting these started. But as far as our roles, sort of in the C-suite, we really divided up as Dr. Poppy is CMO, so he oversees a lot of our marketing strategies. He manages spend across all the offices. He looks at new marketing avenues, arranges for our TV, our social media, all those kinds of things. We all have our hands in different baskets, but that's sort of like his primary, tier. And then Dr. Stott has been our CFO slash CGO, perhaps you could call it, where he's got his hands more in the finances of things. He's managing the bank accounts, intercompany transfers, things like that, making sure the books are good, working with our accountants and wealth management as well. And then I've taken on the role of essentially COO. So it's mostly operational, trying to, go through all of our practices, making sure that all of our, SOPs are being followed and things like that. And a lot of that's really been distilled through our regional managers. They're really the more closer touch point with the actual practices themselves. Whereas I'm not talking directly to office managers in most cases. But we are establishing all the operational systems and things and making sure that those are being executed and obviously iterating on them over the time. I would say that, we've called me the CEO. I'm not entirely sure I identify with the term. I think it is kind of a tripartite role right now, where the three of us work in conjunction to make executive decisions about the direction of the company and the vision. But yeah, I think it can be a little bit awkward in a partnership, sort of divvying up those roles at times because it's hard for everyone to just take their own swim lanes at times because we're all kind of similar in our skill sets, I think, right? Like we're all dentists first, like we're not, non-clinical, corporate people. Now that we're starting to, grow and expand a lot more, we're actually taking that on. Like right now, we're in the process of hiring a full-time COO to really take on my job in a more official capacity and allow me to kind of focus a little bit more on my clinical capacity and supporting the doctors themselves, spending a little bit more time in their offices, helping out with surgery and things like that. So I hope that answers your questions,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
some degree. Yeah.
No, it does. Thank
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question because that's kind of leading us right where like, hey, it's important to pick the right people that's going to be on this journey with you. So it's pretty crucial in that. So I am curious, like Tyler, is there a piece of advice or maybe something that you've used when you're assessing the talent? You mentioned like, hey, I'm in the operations seat right now, kind of working in that role. You're looking for a COO. How are you assessing the talent? What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's been a really cool process, and it's one that I have to give a lot of credit to Michael Irving on. He's been coaching us through this process, and I don't know how we would have approached it without him. So we managed to locate a headhunting service that sort of procures high level people that match what it is that you're looking for, and they're people with prior experiences and things like that. So that helped us get high quality candidates for what we were looking for. um, and then we would obviously review the resumes, see who kind of lined up. We'd have an initial interview where we just a quick get to know you, what is your vibe, basically, just trying to assess that. And then we created homework. So we had a project where we have everyone that we're interested in sign NDAs, and then we put together all of our financials, our balance sheet, our cash flow statements, our profit and loss statements, trailing 12 months, and gave it to them and said, "Hey, what are you going to do with this?" Right. And they then returned to us projects that said, this is my analysis of where you stand. This is my understanding of where you're wanting to go, and this is how I'm going to help you get there. Right. And so the people that we really liked were the ones that had less chat GPT heavy responses to that, and had a lot more, organic input in it and had really insightful things that we had not seen. And people that got really granular as well and were like really, really focused and attention to detail. They packaged up everything very nicely. There was clearly a lot of intent in making things look very pretty and presentable and sensible. And then we, talk with them to discuss what their findings were and ask them questions about that. And then that really helped us narrow it down to just a handful. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Our next step is now going to be an in-person. So we're going to fly them out. We're going to have dinner with them and just really figure out if this is someone that we can see ourselves working with long term. So I think it really all starts with totally understanding what it is that you need first, instead of just kind of expecting someone to fill a spot that isn't really well defined. So that's really where it has to start. Is like, what is it that your business needs? What does this position actually look like? What are they going to be responsible for? And then you filter your candidates, you create a project out of it, you see what they can make of it, and above all, it has to be someone that you can see yourself working with.
I love that. So
Mhm.
then it kind of would be for every role then. I know we have a question chiming in about associate. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing kind of that you've created an avatar. You know what the business needs, you know what you're
Hmm.
looking for. You create an avatar of a person that you're looking for. But what about associates? Associates are a little unique. How did you guys identify? How many associates are you working with? What does that look like?
Yeah, right now, so when we start an office, and I appreciate that question, by the way. So when we start an office, we always start it just with one doctor, right? So part of our model is that, we've really broken up, historically with full arch treatment. This really isn't the mode anymore, but people would get referred to an oral surgeon to do surgery. They go back to their dentist to restore the teeth. Sometimes there were more people involved. There were a whole bunch of steps and things. Grossly inflated the cost and treatment times, and people quickly got tired of that. But that's very much gone by the wayside. But what did become more prevalent, with Clear Choice and Nuvia is like a dual provider model or more, right? Where you have prosthodontists and surgeons, and now they're still different people, but they're all under one roof. But in our case, through the advent of digital dentistry and some creative workflows, we've made it such that a really competent surgeon that understands the restorative aspect of it and can think in reverse and knows where the case needs to go, and then gets back to the point of the surgery and can do that competently. That's really the best way for us to do this. We need one person that's going to be responsible for that, and then we have a really competent team that's working under them. And so, really, what we look for, in our years of doing recruiting and training, we got a really good sense of what kind of skills were necessary to be able to do what we do. It's a pretty hyper specific, skill set. We're not just looking for general dentists, but we have to know that people can execute surgery well. We have to know that they have a certain stomach lining for taking on, sometimes I don't want to say risky cases, but a little more high stakes, right? Like you're taking on all of someone's mouth. It's a multi-hour surgery. If people tend to get really nervous or they're particularly concerned, or maybe they stay up at night thinking about cases, this may not be the most stable person to have in that position. You want someone that's going to be long-term and bought in for a while. And so, we evaluate their cases. We have them send us casework. We ask them, I kind of had this like survey that I send out, and it returns it fills out a Google Doc or Google Sheets where I can go through and see all the responses to what their experience look like, what they see for themselves in a leadership position, their sort of, personal philosophy about leadership in an office, things like that. You want to see a degree of leadership for sure. You want people that are not just going to try to show up for work, clock in, clock out type of thing. You want them to take a sense of ownership. But we also wanted people that really wanted to focus on the clinical aspects of it, because we wanted people that were really focused on clinical excellence and didn't so much want to deal with all the administrative and, personnel challenges that come along with running an office, because that's really the crux of it, right? Like you can be a fantastic full art surgeon but just be absolutely dog shit at running an office, and we can solve that part of it for you and allow you to like really focus in on just doing the best possible treatment you can. And if that's something you value, and you want a little bit of skin in the game, you potentially want some equity in an office, then we can provide that for you. And that has a lot of really big upside, right? And being a part of a organization that has scale, that can negotiate lower prices and get a better bottom line for you, and you can also participate in a private equity event should that happen. That can be a pretty attractive thing for certain associates, but it's not right for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. So what you're doing is, so the one doctor coming in, and you mentioned like it's kind of shifting, or the industry is changing a little bit. I
Mhm.
heard that pretty quickly. Can you elaborate a little bit? What do you feel is kind of like, what about this full arch landscape is changing? What's evolving? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, what we're really seeing is an explosion in the full arch capable general dentist. It's not an oral surgeon, it's not a prosthodontist, it's a general dentist that is hyper focused on implants and just does the surgery and restores the teeth as well. So they're taking care of everything from start to finish. And digital dentistry has really lowered that barrier to entry. It's made things a lot, when I first started this, whenever we would start an office, I mean, for one, you had to have a much larger footprint, right? Because you needed an in-house lab. You actually needed a lab technician, which could be a $80,000 to $120,000 a year employee that was highly trained and focused on the sort of analog workflow aspect of that. So that's sort of like your in-house lab. Nowadays, I mean, you can fit a lab in a broom closet. I mean, it's pretty amazing what you can do, and when you outsource the digital design and things like that, and you've got really competent designers on one end of it, taking care of a lot of the process aspects of it, and you just have to be really hyper focused on taking accurate records. It makes it a lot simpler for people that are surgically focused to also be restoratively competent as well. And so we've tried to make that as simple as possible and bridge that gap. And so I guess to address your question more directly, what's happened is full arch has been democratized. And I think that is potentially a dangerous thing, because it is becoming fairly easy to market yourself as someone who is competent in doing full arch, without fully appreciating all the different things that go into it and all the risks associated with, especially long term. And so that's something where we've had to get, really, really particular about the people that we trust, to treat patients in our offices. And we've had misses like anybody could, but I think we've been a lot better at picking the right person from the very beginning and having them, strapped in with us, long term. And we've got some people that I think are going to be with us for a long time. And that's something we're really proud of. And we don't take that decision lightly.
Wow. Okay. You seem pretty tech savvy. So, I gotta ask, how are you integrating with like AI technology?
Uh-huh.
Where do you see this space for you in the next 35 years?
I think that right now, in terms of our implementation of AI, I mean, we've messed around with some of the AI receptionists and really kind of tuned those. One of the hardest things, for us is this is a very, it's extremely important that the person that is responsible for closing cases in your office is taking in new patient calls. And whenever new leads come in, that they get to those leads as soon as possible. And so those people need to be very designated towards those things, and all those calls need to be routed directly to them. And anything else, as far as an existing patient, or someone having problems or things like that, we need to make sure those people are attended to, of course, with just as much urgency, but we need them routed elsewhere. And so that can be a person, which in most of our offices, there is another person that's handling the phones for those types of calls. But for after hours and when someone calls at some odd hour of the night or on the weekends or something like that, what has helped us to some degree is an AI receptionist that can filter some of that. And it has gotten better. I think when we first started, it was really frustrating, and people were getting frustrated with it and they were complaining about it. More recently, I've been monitoring those calls and it's actually gotten a lot smarter. So I can see some progress there. But I think it's a lot more interesting to talk about what that looks like in the next 3 to 5 years. Like, yeah, so actually, right before we got on this call, I was doom scrolling on my phone, and I saw a video, and I remember seeing this video 2 years ago, and it's an AI generated video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. And 2 years ago, and it's like showing how this has progressed over time. So they've been, reprompting this over time with more and more complex, LLMs and things. And, 2 years ago, this thing had like 10 fingers. It was constantly shifting. Like no one could ever be fooled that this was a video. And it was hilarious. We were like, oh, you know what? We're safe. The AI revolution, it's 20 years away. We're fine. And then they show a year ago, and all of a sudden, this thing is starting to look like something that would fool someone that wasn't more internet savvy. And you're like, huh, you know what? For a second there, I thought that was Will Smith. And then now, you fast forward to, what we're seeing right now, and it's the same video, Will Smith eating spaghetti. And I mean, it's like this could have been a scene in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, it's like it's just on your TV. This is Will Smith from the '90s. He's just eating spaghetti. Even some of the idiosyncratic like facial expressions and things like that, they're just spot on, right? And so AI is like so vastly expanding, and it's becoming so much more human and indistinguishable, that its integration into every single industry that we know of, and ones that maybe don't even exist yet, is going to be so universal. And so I think as far as dentistry is concerned, we'll see, a lot more, intake of leads happening with AI, and that being directed, really well. But there may even be pre-qualification that happens in terms of finances and things like that. You can have higher, better pre-qualified leads that have already had finances lined up before they've ever talked to a real person. On the actual clinical side of things, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think we're really not that far from a patient coming into the office, taking a CBCT, having some pictures or facial scans taken, and then the AI literally plans their entire case right in front of you, has different scenarios for where implants can go. It can help you along with what that plan is going to look like and give you a best probability of success for that. You're going to be able to do your surgery and then take your records, pump it through the AI, and almost instantaneously, it's going to have a perfect design that's run through finite element analysis, and it's figured out the absolute physically most perfect design for those teeth in just a matter of minutes, and then it goes right to the print. So that cuts out a whole lot of fat.
Wow.
So yeah, I think the whole design fabrication side of things is going to be completely revolutionized by AI, but also the people element as well. And so I think it's only going to make things better. It's only going to, help with the cost effectiveness of things. It's going to make us more effective as clinicians. And I'm excited about it. I think that, the more on top of it you are and the more ready you are to implement as soon as things are viable, the better off you're going to be. You can't ignore this kind of thing. So, and also
Wow.
documentation as well is extremely important. There's a lot of AI bots that are helping out with chart notes and things, and making sure those are really complete and exhaustive. And that's extremely important in this industry. You have to protect yourself in all of your cases. You have to document extraordinarily well to make sure that you're protected in the case that there's a board complaint or an upset patient, what have you. Because especially if you're a general dentist trying to do this, I mean, a lot of people haven't quite come around that we can do this competently. We can, but not everyone knows that yet. So documentation is extremely important. AI helps with that too. It's easier to enumerate the things. It's actually harder. Sorry, it's harder to enumerate the things that AI won't affect in the next 3 or 5 years. It really
Yeah.
is.
I
So
mean, the only thing I would say, maybe I'm wrong, is dentist, you have job security. AI is
I
not
don't know.
taking your job. So
I wouldn't be so sure.
he's like, that's debatable. I don't
I
know.
really wouldn't be so sure. We're seeing, the robotics are coming a long way. I don't know. I think honestly, I think the bottleneck there, like the actual limiting reagent, is not the AI. It's people accepting it. It's people accepting
Exactly.
being treated by a robot, being treated by an AI, not being treated by a person, not being able to have a conversation. But if the results are there and people are having a lot of success and the data is there, and I think with future generations, people are going to be a lot quicker to adopt that kind of thing, especially when they're getting raised by like an AI nanny, like it's not, people aren't gonna have an issue with that. So, I'm really grateful I'm not trying to be a dentist 20 years from now because I think it'd be a lot harder. I'm grateful I'm right here in this window when AI is still sort of in its infancy. So,
As we're training it to do this. I
yeah,
love
as
it.
we're training it to replace us, that's literally what's happening. There's no question about it. So,
I love it. Well, I'm excited. I mean, honestly, guys, this has been like you've had so many aha moments throughout this call. So I really, really appreciate you taking this time with us tonight. So I want to kind of pause, open it up if anyone wants to drop in a question
mhm.
in the chat. Come off mute if you want to ask any questions while we have Tyler on the call this evening. Any last minute kind of questions or things you guys want to tie up on? Give everyone a second and then let's see here. What AI company are you currently using?
So we use Mango as our VoIP, and they've recently started with an AI. So we've been working with that for the past few months. I don't know for sure that I'd recommend it because I haven't tried other products as well. So I wouldn't say, oh, like you definitely gotta go with Mango. I mean, Mango's a good service in general. I would say that the AI has come quite a ways, and we've done reasonably well at tuning that. But there's a lot of options out there. So I don't know who's doing it the best. I definitely think that wading your way into the waters for now and like seeing how some of this works and kind of learning the nuts and bolts of it is probably a good idea. And if you already use Mango, it's a pretty easy thing to implement. So I'd recommend it if you're already there. If not, maybe you can shop around and see what else is out there. But man, I think, when I was at the last DEO summit, I mean, I saw like 40 different AI receptionists, and they're all like the leading AI receptionists. So like, I don't know how you parse that out. I don't know how you figure out which one's most sophisticated, which one's going to learn the best. I wish I could help you there, but yeah, we use Mango.
Can I ask
Perfect.
a question
Please.
Yes,
real quick?
please.
Okay, so when do you decide, okay, I've given like, do you give a second chance to the employee that's not in the right fit? When do you decide, okay, we just got to move on
Yeah,
and
no,
bring on a new, how do you make that decision?
no, that's a great question. So, I mean, there obviously has to be interventions, right? Like you can't expect people to do something you didn't tell them to do, right? And, a lot of times I think the assumption for us is if someone does something wrong and they haven't met an expectation, the first thing we're going to assume is that we didn't do our job. And I think we still operate with that, right? And then our job at that point is to then take to that person and say, "Hey, this was the expectation. This is what we got. This is the gap there, and this is what I need you to do." Like, let's first talk about why did we not get there, right? Like, approach all the little things that we're blocking. That STAR method, by the way, that Max brought up, brilliant. Talk about those blocks. Talk about how we're going to address it. Attach a timeline to sort of remediating that thing, and say, hey, we're going to reapproach this after a set amount of time after implementing these things, and let's see where we're at. Then, after that point, that second conversation is really easy because we already talked about exactly what we're going to be reviewing, exactly what we're going to be looking at, and it's a very objective thing at that point. And if people have corrected that action, fantastic. Like, you've solved the problem, you've worked with someone, you created some trust there. This person's growing in the position. Like, that's a really, really good thing. If not, if like nothing has changed and nothing's been implemented, you pretty much already know that's not the right person.
You both know. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I think exactly. It allows you to both know, like they know they didn't do what they were asked to do, and that they didn't make that connection there. And so the result is it's almost a foregone conclusion. And now you just help them find another thing that might be a little bit better for them. But yeah,
Do you ever demote? Do you ever demote?
Yeah, I've done that.
And the employees are happy, they'll stay, or they leave once you demote?
You know, I have seen, in my personal experience, that did not work well.
Right.
Um, in my personal experience, I would say that in some other clinics, we've had situations where somebody was sort of brought on as like a lead assistant, then they got graduated to an office manager, and then they were more or less like demoted back to assistant. And you know what? They said, you know what? I thought that that was all for me. I actually hate it. I just want to be an assistant. And it actually worked really well. And that sort of transparency and relationship put that person right where they needed to be all along. And now they don't sit there thinking, oh, what if I were an office manager? Sometimes the most
Mhm.
toxic thing you can have is a dream that isn't actually going to work out for you, right? So having visited that and figured out it's not going to work might actually be a blessing for a person. But in my personal experience, no, it didn't work out so well. They seemed to be on board with it, and then they just kind of up and left, and I should have just cut it off to begin with.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate the question, and I also appreciate that you're still in your surgical ground. That's awesome.
It's still 5 p.m. in the Pacific.
Hey, I am. Where are you at,
We're
by the way?
still working out here.
Yeah, no, I'm in Seattle, so I'm
Oh,
at the
you're in
office
Seattle.
too.
Okay, so you're on the
Yeah,
West Coast. Okay, cool.
cool,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, a pleasure to meet you, Payam. Yeah,
Nice to meet you as well.
absolutely. Mm.
Cute. All right, guys. Well, we have covered a ton this evening. I'm just going to sum it up real quick as I can. From going deep, before you go wide, our who versus our how, what real partnerships look like, to where AI is taking us. So, lots and lots of conversations that were happening tonight. I do want to give Tyler the chance before we wrap up. I just want to give you one last word. What's one thing that you want to tell everyone on the call or listening to this podcast that you would hope they walk away from tonight?
Oh boy. Yeah, how to tie all that up in a bow. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone that came in to listen to this. It's humbling to have so many people in the room. I actually, to be perfectly frank, usually when I podcast, it's like a one-on-one thing. It's pre-recorded. We can edit it. I can take out all my ums and ahs and stuff like that. I didn't know we were doing it live, but I think it actually went really well. And just the fact that you guys are willing to spare some time, at the earliest, it's like 5 o'clock in the evening for you. I mean, some of you on the East Coast, my God. So just the fact that you're sparing that time means that you're well on your way to whatever success means for you. So I really appreciate that you were willing to do that. And then secondly, I don't know that I really gave enough credit to my business partners, Dr. Caleb Stott, Dr. Swarren Poppy. Those guys, I mean, they keep me accountable to being the best version of myself at all times. And it's really easy to work hard when the people working alongside you are doing the same thing. And when you're in a relationship where you truly feel that you're looking out for each other, you know, I think with partnership, it's not just about it's easy to think about the things that you can win together and the things that you can build, but it's also about the things that you could lose, right? And it's the fact that your partners, like they have families, they have people that depend on them, and like that's your family too. Like you are literally responsible for them as well. And making sure that you're showing up every day and being the best version of yourself and knowing all the people that now depend on you, like that can create a lot of stress, but it can also be a really huge driver. And I think when you really lean into the true meaning of partnership and understand that you're accepting all the good things and all the bad things that come from it as well, and you're all going to look out for each other and support each other, it's just a beautiful thing. And I wouldn't do it any other way. Like I said, partnership is a dangerous thing, but when it comes together in a great way, it's truly beautiful, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So for all of you that are out there navigating partnerships, my hats are off to you. I hope it's a successful one. I hope it continues to be one. I believe that I'm in a very fortunate position, and I'm humbled by that as well. And yeah, I think the most generic but very true advice is you're the sum of the people you spend the most time around. And if those people are great and they're the best version of you that you hope to be, then you're in the right place. So.
Bam, that is a high note to end on. So, thank you so much. This has been incredibly valuable, you guys, from what, not how, going deep before wide, the reality of leadership. Remember, it's not just about making people happy, it's about making them understand, hold them accountable, do what's best for the business. So, to everyone that's listening to this podcast, everyone that's on the call this evening, I just want you to remember this is just the beginning. The difference between surviving and thriving isn't luck. It's not just you wake up and you're lucky. You're surviving. You go from surviving to thriving. That's not how this works. So keep growing, keep learning, put yourselves in the right room. It really does matter. That is what the DEO is here for. We're not just here to share success stories. We're actually here to be along the journey with you, with the community. So thanks for joining in this evening. Thanks for joining us. And thank you so much, Dr. Tolbert, for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing your journey and all your vulnerability that you had with us. So keep smiling, keep growing. Until next time.